this view is more based on misconceptions than on facts. The first misconception, I think, is the perception by natives about the size of immigrants. So there are two well-known exaggerations, overestimation. One is that people tend to overestimate the size of immigration, and the second, they tend to overestimate immigrants' reliance on the welfare state. So this generates this fear that you mentioned, that more immigration will jeopardize the sustainability of the welfare state for financial reasons. So I think this is not correct. However, a more valid threat is the threat that because of the fact that people prefer to have redistribution within an homogeneous group, culturally, ethnically, religiously, they become less favorable to redistribution when the group of potential beneficiaries becomes more diverse. And this has been shown mostly in the context of the United States, where the salient dimension of diversity is racial diversity. Many studies in the US have been showing that when you have more blacks in the population of a state or of a city, then the white majority becomes less favorable to redistribution and reduces public good provision, welfare benefits, and all these type of things. So if you transpose this to the European context, which has been done by many people, then the fear is that more immigration, increasing diversity, will make European natives less favorable to redistribution and will vote for reducing the welfare state. And that's the real and very valid threat. Yes, so I mentioned that there are a few studies in the context of the US. In Europe, it's not so good, and we have not had the same type of very high quality studies, although some very specific ones have, for example, about Sweden, have been done using what we call natural experiments to estimate and identify the effect of immigration on preferences for redistribution. One difficulty in estimating this effect is what is called the welfare magnet effect. The fact that immigrants tend to go to places which have a large welfare state and where people are more favorable to redistribution. So you have a spurious correlation between the size of immigration and the size of redistribution and the attitudes to redistribution. So that makes things very difficult to really have a clear view of what's going on. So what we did in our study is to kind of use techniques that allow for neutralizing this welfare magnet effect by looking not at countries, but at regions within countries, because in most countries, the welfare state is defined at the national level, not at the regional level. And our results indeed show that on average, there is a negative effect of immigration on support for redistribution. We used a census and other official data to measure immigration at the regional level, and a well-known and used survey in Europe called the European Social Survey to measure attitudes to redistribution. And indeed, we find that on average, when you have more immigrants in the regions, then the natives become less favorable to redistribution, and this is a sizable effect, and so it should be taken account when thinking about the policy and the political implications of immigration. Well, not necessary for two reasons. I think in general, voters' preferences do not translate directly into policies, okay? Because this is not the only factor in making political decisions. You have also interest groups, but the main reason is that political parties are usually not unidimensional. It's not that you vote for or against redistribution. So parties offer a mix of policies. And for example, the populist parties, the extreme right, is not necessarily anti-redistribution. It could be both anti-immigration and anti-redistribution. And so it's not so clear that more immigration maybe could increase the populist vote, but not necessarily induce less redistribution. So first thing I should say that Luxembourg is not in our sample, but I think we can get many insights for Luxembourg. What we see is that the negative relationship that I mentioned between immigration and support for redistribution in most regions of Europe is not true in a cluster of regions to which Luxembourg is very similar. We see that in the capital regions and in the regions of Switzerland, for example, where you have, as in Luxembourg, many immigrants, about a third of the population and a bit more in terms of labor force, which are very rich regions, where the immigrants are more educated, come from, in general, more diverse set of countries and more and richer countries. There we don't see this negative relationship. So it seems there is a different regime in those regions where you have a kind of virtuous circle between the quantity of immigrants, their quality, their diversity, and with this type of high quality, high quantity, high diversity immigration, the negative relationship both between size of immigration and attitudes to immigration and support for redistribution is not there anymore. So I think Luxembourg belongs more to that group of regions with a kind of general realization that immigration is very much tied to prosperity, and you can have one without the other. I think this is something people know, but it's nice to see in the data as well.